Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I'm A. Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review the show on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate your feedback and would be honored if you shared the podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Today, my guest is Curtis Butler. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Why don't you start us off by just telling me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up in the Northeast of the U.S., upstate New York, one of 5 kids, and had quite a fun journey through school and ended up having an entire career in finance. Recently shifted to career coaching for students and recent graduates, but I'm married with 2 beautiful daughters. The eldest, Charlotte is her name, the youngest, Claire. And Charlotte has significant disabilities. She's just turned 19. So it's been quite the journey with her. She has cerebral palsy, is wheelchair bound, is non-speaking, but she's a lovely human being. And she's taught me an incredible amount about life and about caring and inclusion.
Yeah, that's great. We talked a little bit before we started recording. My daughter Cecilia is 22, uses a wheelchair, epilepsy, cerebral palsy. So we have interesting connections in that area for sure. Let's start off. What is your definition of inclusion?
Yeah, it's literally, the word include, right? So trying to make regular everyday life more thinking about people who might otherwise not be involved and might be excluded, who don't necessarily naturally fit into a situation. And we have to make the effort to bring them in. And that's something that's really important in our family. So we try to create typical experiences that are super fun, like skiing and water skiing. And even a couple of years ago in Jackson Hole, paragliding.
Oh, wow.
Just to remind our daughter that she is a part of this family. She is an American kid who gets to do what other American kids get to do.
Right. So she skis and water skis and everything?
Yes. The first time water skiing was extremely scary for me.
Yeah.
Because it's so wobbly, right?
Yeah.
But I have photos and videos that
Sure.
were shared on the internet of just the grins,
Yeah.
just the smiles, because we joke. Even though she's never walked, she's in a wheelchair. She loves to be on her feet, loves to jump when she can, and loves to move. We say she's an adrenaline junkie. So when she was little, her swing was awesome. The favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
But now it's, she even likes car rides, but just getting up on her feet and saying, looking around, saying, "Hey, I'm like you guys." That's really important.
So how the water skiing thing? I mean, so I'm from Minnesota, so I've actually never water skied, but I mean, I've seen people do it. She stands up by herself, or do you have to be with her, or how does that work?
So she's basically in like a sled.
Okay.
On 2 skis, and then there's someone obviously assisting her. But she's very well supported. Same with the skiing. It's kind of, she's just strapped into a sled.
Sure.
But just loves the movement. And what I love about it, and a shout out to the people who do this, the not-for-profits, the volunteers who do this. They're very skilled at whatever sport we participate in.
Sure.
And their job is not just to check the box. In their minds, it's to make a really fun experience. So the guy that Charlotte has historically skied with flies down the mountain, passing everyone on the mountain. And she just loves it. Almost, it doesn't matter how cold it is, how icy.
Right.
She just loves it.
Yeah. So my daughter actually, it's been probably, I'm talking 10 years ago. So in Minnesota, there's a hospital cerebral palsy thing with, it's called Gillette Children's. So they do an adaptive ski day on a ski hill. We don't really have mountains in Minnesota, so a smaller hill. But yeah, she was similar. We did that once with her, and it was like you said, it was like a sled she sat in, and then they take her up there and then come down. But yeah, she was all bundled up because it was probably January in Minnesota, and just smiles and had a blast. But yeah, it was fun to be there that day and just watch everybody, all the smiles coming down the hill and stuff. So it's a lot of fun to watch for sure.
And I have the photo when we finished the skiing, she did like 6 runs or something, and
Yeah.
we all get inside, rosy cheek, and the
Yep.
look she gave us of just, "Thank you for
Right.
letting me do this. Thank you for letting me experience what all the other kids
Yeah.
are experiencing." It was just it's priceless.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but there's like my daughter really loves going to concerts and stuff. So like, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, stuff involved with my daughter caring for her. Like somebody needs to be with her doing all her daily living stuff 24/7. But then if we go to a concert and you sit there and see her singing and happy, it just kind of you forget about it for a little bit.
Absolutely. That sounds
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. So did you, for me growing up, I don't ever remember being around anybody with a disability or hearing the word disability. Did you have any before your daughter was born? Did you have any experience with it?
I did, and we can get a
Okay.
little bit, cosmic and spiritual, but, um, I remember taking vacations and, down south, South Carolina, Florida,
Okay.
and we go somewhere, stop somewhere for lunch, like a Dairy Queen or something, and, I remember my mother telling me this later. I was probably 10 or 12, and she's like, "We were looking," one of 5 kids, it's easy to lose one. "We were looking around for you, and we couldn't find you," and then someone pointed out, "Is that your son?" And I had just walked up to a boy with Down syndrome and just gave him a hug. And I've just always, I don't know, wanted to help and reach the people who really face those challenges every day, and to just show them that someone cares. That's always been a part of me. So I have a feeling that, my daughter Charlotte chose us. My wife is a nurse practitioner.
Okay.
I have a feeling she chose us. Like, yes, those 2 can do this.
Yeah, I mean that's a good combination. If you have that where you've always wanted to, be around to help, that, and then your wife being a nurse, yeah, that's a good combination.
And it's not to say it's been easy because it's been a real challenge, but
Right.
you know, we feel very grateful, for what we've been able to do for Charlotte.
Sure.
And I think she's really happy about, what she's been able to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for my daughter, like I said, I didn't know anything about disabilities, so went along with what the school, told us because I didn't have any frame of reference, which meant she was sent to like a segregated classroom down the hall with doors that shut off from the regular school. So we wanted to get her into general ed more.
Yes.
What was your experience with school, or how did that go for you guys?
Yes, well, we started out in New York City, and that was our primary concern because it's just they're overrun, they're overwhelmed, they're not really equipped to incorporate a child like Charlotte, and I'm sure like your daughter with really multiple challenges, right? Very complex. So we said, we need to go out to the suburbs, and we got really lucky that the town of Darien, when we got here, really embraced the opportunity to make life better for Charlotte and to create, a setting that would allow her to learn and grow. So we've been very, very fortunate. We live in a very, well-to-do town that takes care of kids like Charlotte. And but you never get to take off your advocacy hat. We always have to be there reminding people to see her future rather than look at Charlotte as a burden or kids like her, as a burden, but just to see the opportunities they're creating and opening up the world for them, right? That we move from inclusion to access, right? Giving them access to opportunity, access to information, so they, now access to technology, so that they can prepare themselves to engage the world, without someone around all the time.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, for me as so I have a son, Aiden, who's 15 months older than Cecilia. So and he I don't like using the word normal, but he's not.
Typical.
Yeah, typical. There you go. So that was my first child, and then Cece was born. So changed a lot of things for me, and I think early on for me as a probably male, maybe dad and male, just had this view like I need to work all the time, just work a lot and never be around home.
Right.
Which when she was born, that changed for me. Because I'm like she had 90-minute grand mal seizures, airlifted more than once. So with that stuff going on, I'm like, there's other things that are more important for me than working. So that was one thing I learned pretty early on. What is there anything that having her like changed your viewpoint or made you realize differently?
Yeah, I think you'll back me up on this one. What didn't change, right? I mean, my whole view
True.
on life, the world, my place in it, other people, my role in helping and making lives of others easier. And we didn't have the benefit of a typical child first. Charlotte was our first experience with children. So we spent the first 6 weeks in the NICU. One of the interesting things is it's a message to parents who face challenges as we have, is that the initial thought, I think this is particularly true for the dads, is that my life is over, right? Everything that I had dreamed, and playing catch and the sports and the weddings, all those things, they seem to just go right out the window in an instant, and you just think your life is over. But I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be. And so for the first year, and this is a half-written book, it will eventually be a full book, but the first year was all about why me.
Right.
And then a switch was flipped, and then it became why not me. And then soon thereafter, I'm glad it's me, that I'm becoming a better person, a better dad, a better human being because of Charlotte, and eventually her sister Claire, who's ultra typical.
Hmm.
Different challenges entirely, and welcome challenges. But for many, many years, I've looked at it like this is a gift and a burden.
Right.
And I have just become, I think, a much more like the person I'd want to be because of this
Right.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, my son was on the gifted side, so we had kind of the both ends of the we had both ends of the education spectrum. So yeah, it was interesting for sure.
Yeah, we have the
Um,
same.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Are we like,
yeah, we have musical theater
yeah,
and A student, and we have wonderful Charlotte. We try
yeah,
to get involved in all that athletic stuff that the other kids are
yeah,
doing.
yeah. Interesting. So talk a little bit about more. I want to get into more like coaching now that you're doing. And one of the questions I saw was, what are some commonly held views about resumes and job searches that you see differently?
Sure. So I meet with students every day, students, recent graduates, who are facing that unfortunate reality today that it's just different out there than when we graduated from college. More than half of the college students these days are taking a first job that does not require a college degree. They're called underemployed. The longer they stay out, away from their career path, the more likely it is that it becomes permanent. And that just was not something we faced, at least when I graduated from school. You just assumed you had a job. So I work with a lot of young people, helping them become more competitive, be able to tell their own story, make themselves more visible through resumes, cover letters, networking, so that if there are hundreds of applicants, they find a way to go from the big pile to the small pile. And then we work a lot on specific interviewing. And to your question about, what are some commonly held views about the job search or about resumes that may not hold so true, I think about resumes in particular, this is something I reinforce every single day, is that your resume is not meant to be a full accounting of everything you've done. Your resume is meant to be a concise demonstration of who you are, what you can bring to the table, and what makes you special, and what you learned from your experiences, not simply the fact that you had them, right? So, you weren't responsible for XYZ, you led XYZ,
Right.
right? And it's not that I worked as an intern at so and so, wealth management firm. It's that I deepened my financial modeling skills. So
Right.
it's about conveying to me what skills you're bringing to the table and what makes you special, rather than just places you've been.
Yeah.
And very often, I think people are taught in school, particularly in technical fields, that they have to just fill their resumes with keywords because of the applicant tracking systems. They're
Hmm.
just scanning resumes using AI, looking for the keywords that match the description. I was just talking, I've spoken recently with several people who are either recruiters for companies or do similar work to mine. I'm helping executives find jobs. And the truth is, very, very few companies are actually equipped or use those application tracking systems.
Okay.
They're still using, going through resumes the old-fashioned way. Yes, they probably can screen them. I need this particular skill. I need someone who can do this. So they screen the resumes for that, whether it's manually or using some sort of software. But let your resume still be written by a human being. It's not all about keywords. Keywords are important because it's about identifying what are they looking for in the job description, and do I have that? And keeping your resumes relatively concise. If you're a new graduate, your resume really shouldn't be more than 500 words. If it is, then you need ChatGPT's help to make it a little bit more concise and professional. And then the other one that's just so important is, and I talk about this all the time, I've posted on this, I've spoken with so many students after their interviews. I say, how did it go? And they say, oh, it went really well. I answered all their questions correctly. It's like, that's great, but that's not your entire job in an interview. It's not a math quiz, right? An interview is an opportunity to make a connection and to show yourself as the right person to be joining the team. So that involves all those other non-technical skills, beyond your resume. It's about ability to connect. It's about your professionalism, your leadership quality, the confidence that you convey when you're having the conversation. The ability to connect as a peer with a grown-up rather than look like a college student every time you're talking with them. And these skills are hard to come by these days because most communication takes place like this.
Right, for sure.
So that's a lot of what we work on, right? Helping young people tell their own story and how to engage professionals in a professional way so that they are viewed as the next youngest member of the team rather than a college kid.
Sure. How important is networking, for job searching, like trying to have connections between you and your potential employer or that kind of stuff?
I would say as important as ever, and maybe even more important than ever, in part because there are hundreds of applicants for most jobs now. And how do you get a leg up? Or they come from everywhere too, right? Everyone's mobile now. It's very different from 50 years ago.
Right.
Whereas, you got a job near where you live, you got a job in your town, and it was, your dad knew somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
That still helps, but I encourage young people to start networking, for example, through LinkedIn as early as possible. Set up a profile and start sharing your milestones in high school. That you won this competition, you participated in this, your team did that, and this is the school I'm going to. And then start following people and organizations that interest you and seeing the content they're creating and comment on it, like that content, just getting yourself in the mix. What I call establishing a positive footprint on the internet, beyond Instagram and TikTok.
Right.
And this, the earlier you start, the better. High school is the best time to start, to get a resume together and to start those conversations. And on to your point about the networking, the best place to start is always closest to home. At the family barbecue, start talking to your parents' friends.
Right.
And particularly if they're in, have a job that might interest you, don't be afraid. Just ask them about it. They'd be happy to help a high schooler. Right. And that really contributes to the practice that's so necessary for those interviews that will eventually come.
I mean, to me, like you said, talking to your parents' friends at a barbecue, to me, if I was the person, as a high schooler approaching me, that would also mean something to me, just because probably a lot of high schoolers aren't doing that. So if you were doing that, it would probably give you a leg up too, wouldn't it? Kind of, you're doing something more that other kids aren't doing.
Yes, we all know that.
I would think so.
That friend of our kids, was just a little bit more mature, right?
Yeah.
They're willing, they're comfortable to have that conversation. It's memorable. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So another thing that I thought about was, it seems now that, I'm 47, so we went to college, got a bachelor's. I have a master's, but it seems like now a lot more people are getting their masters. So has the where when I was younger, like you need a bachelor's to get your foot in the door? Is like a master's becoming more needed to get jobs, or not really?
I think it's just another way to differentiate yourself and
Okay,
showcase extra skills, but it depends on what field you're going into.
sure,
If a master's degree is 1 to 2 years, you really want to do the calculus. Am I better off getting a job and earning
right,
real money
yep,
and building skills in the workplace versus
true,
getting more, with teachers, yeah, master's is almost essential now, for example.
yeah,
Um, in business, I'm not so sure. Maybe something
right,
specialized in finance or some quantitative or analytics, but just a general business degree. I think the bloom is off the rose on that a little bit
yeah,
because again, back when I graduated from school, I think there was a very different philosophy about bringing on the next generation of employees, and it was status over skill. So if you went to a prestigious university a long time ago, we would just want you on the team. You're smart, you got talent, you got
sure, yep,
potential, and we can brag and say we have a student from so and so Ivy League school.
yep,
Nowadays, I think that is no longer the case. I think it's much more about what skills do you bring to the job on day one.
sure,
It's much more pragmatic now. And so that's something I focus a lot on. There's the technical skills, but also the relational skills, those soft
right.
skills that are so critical and frankly are harder to come by these days.
So for me, like I have a hard time recognizing like the skills I have or how to convey them to, like, let's say a potential employer. Is that something you help your clients with, or do you have any tips on how, if you're somebody like me that has a hard time, verbalizing or conveying what my skills are?
Yes, so that I call that the personal narrative,
Okay.
and that is perhaps the only way to get a job in the first 3 minutes of an interview. To tell your story, because that common opening to interviews, tell me about yourself, is a huge opportunity, even though most people find it very daunting. It's an opportunity for you to tell the hiring manager what to think of you.
Sure.
So when I talk about my own personal narrative, I highlight the things that will stand out to them. I show them rather than telling them I'm very qualified, I'm very skilled. I say I was an Eagle Scout, am an Eagle Scout,
Hmm.
and I went to college and did this, and these are the lessons I learned. And I was in a competitive sport as a rower, 12-month a year sport. These are the skills that came from that. And
Hmm.
then everything was about building and growing. So it's about showing them through your experiences things that will prove to be important to them. I mention to students all the time, I say the most commented on item on my resume is something I did when I was 18 years old,
Hmm.
Eagle Scout, because it checks every box for them. They say, wow,
Right.
okay, in high school, he was choosing leadership and community, right? And was
Over.
committed to
Yeah.
going all the way before the age of 18.
Right.
And that's checking a lot of boxes in their minds without me having to tell them all those things. I'm just showing them
Yeah.
this is who I am. So it's the personal narrative is just a great way telling your story. Not this is my job today, this is what I do. That doesn't
Right.
help differentiate you that much from the crowd.
Right.
As I mentioned, I grew up in upstate New York, one of 5 kids, son of a lawyer and a nurse, right? So we grew up with values of giving back and honesty and integrity, and I knew what it meant to be a member of a team, and I wasn't the center of the universe, right? As one of 5 kids, so there's a lot that comes through that I can summarize all that in 10 seconds, but it tells you a lot about me that will prove to be extremely important on the job,
Right.
more than you have this particular technical skill, you've done this job before.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people who can do the latter. But getting to know you as a person is really important if you can do it concisely, right? You don't want to go off on tangents
Right.
and leave the topic. But if you can do it concisely, just let me know who you are, slipping in little tidbits about yourself, that will go a long way.
Sure. What are you, what do you think are some skills that you and I, as dads of daughters with disabilities have picked up that we should showcase when we're like, presenting ourselves for like a new job or opportunity?
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea, because just think about how much you've learned and how much you've changed, right? I think
Right.
we've we've had to learn a degree of patience that most people never have to learn.
Right.
We've had to learn acceptance. And when with our daughters, particularly when they were young, when communication was extremely challenging, I say this has contributed to my coaching, to my leadership, to my mentoring. I've been able to see the wonderful person that Charlotte is and look past all the things that she isn't. And I think that really, really helps when engaging anyone, actually, is
Right.
to see the best in people, to assume the best, right? We talk about in our, the disabled community, presume competence,
Yeah.
right? The history has been presuming incompetence,
Yeah.
right? So the new wave is assume that they understand, assume that they want to participate. And I think that has just helped us, both of us, I'm sure,
Right.
engage everyone we meet, and to believe they have something to offer, even if it's not obvious.
Right. That's great. What advice do you have for parents of a child with a disability?
That gets back to that story that Charlotte was our first, and it just seemed like our lives that we had planned
Okay.
out for ourselves were over, and they weren't. It just
Right.
required some adjustment. And yes, there's a lot of time, energy, and resources devoted to making Charlotte's life better, but it's worth it. And you talk about skills also, you get great at compartmentalization.
Yeah.
I was literally in a finals pitch for a piece of business. I was waiting to enter the room, and I got a phone call. My wife, I was down in Virginia, and I was sitting with my colleague in the car waiting for us to be called in. And she said, Charlotte's in an ambulance. She had a massive seizure. We're in the ambulance right now. I headed to the hospital. And I, you know, chatted with her about that, hung up the phone, told my colleague what was going on. He said, let's call it off. Let's tell him we're off to reschedule. I said, no can do. We flew all the way down here. I'm
Right.
setting that aside for the next hour, and I'm doing what I came here to do.
Right.
And we the parents of children with disabilities, we become experts at compartmentalization, because we can't let it leak into every other aspect of our
Right.
lives. We have to be able to manage them separately.
Yeah. No, that hits true. I mean, I probably haven't had that situation, but I mean, there was multiple times where I was at work and yeah, I had the same. I mean, and I worked for a while, like an hour and a half away from home. So yeah, she's on her way to the ER. It's like I can't. I'm at work. I can't get there before she gets there. There's nothing I can do, to help her in like being there. I want to be there, but just kind of, I got to finish my stuff and then I'll go there when I'm done, kind of thing. So that makes a lot of sense too.
And
Yeah.
forgive yourself for that too. There's
Right.
often a lot of guilt that parents attach to themselves, right? For not being able to
Yeah.
be there and not being able to do everything. But we're all only human, right? So we
Yeah,
have
for
to be
sure.
kind to ourselves and let ourselves off the hook.
Yeah. Plus, those situations when that happened for me, it kind of helped me because when you're right there, like you feel like you have to stay with her, do everything you can to help her. But then when you're not there, when something happens, I started to realize like I can't be in that mental place either where I feel like I have to, save her or help her all the time. That's not good for me. So it kind of also made me realize like, hey, you gotta take time for yourself. You can't be in that mode all the time worrying something's going to happen. So that kind of, in a weird way, kind of also helps long term.
And what I've struggled to learn, and hoping that I'm learning, is
Yep.
it's not good for our kids either,
No,
right?
for
They
sure.
need to learn some resilience and independence,
Yep.
and know that we have many aspects of our lives that separate from them.
Right.
And
For sure.
it's a really important lesson we can teach them. But if we're always there to pick up the pieces, always there
Yep.
to
That's
deal with
also,
everything that they're facing, then they're not going to be able to learn to do that themselves.
that's also a great point for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. And it's easier. I mean, in my situation, I still checking myself. Like now we're talking about where, I mean, she needs 24/7 somebody with her. So she lives with her mom. and then comes over to my house 2 nights a week usually. So just where's she going to live long term? I mean, I'm 47. I'm probably going to pass before she does. So like trying to figure some of that stuff out too. So you're just like, yeah. And the more you do make all the decisions, put out all the fires for her, that doesn't help her like long term. That's also a very true thing. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Yep.
Yeah, we try not to think about those long-term issues every day because they're just too heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it is for sure. I mean, absolutely. But it's like at the same time you have to, but yeah, you just can't fixate on it and worry about it all the time.
Right.
What is one tip you can share today to help the listeners be more inclusive? So just something simple they can start today.
Well, I was just in front of a large number of college students talking about inclusion, accessibility.
Sure.
And I said, one thing you can do, you guys are all very active. Let's say you're a runner, you're in a particular sport, or you're a teacher. You can volunteer a little bit of time. If you're going to run that 5K, find the organization in your community where you run 5Ks with kids like ours, right?
Sure.
You do a jog stroller running your 5K. You're not going to get your PR, but you're going to make somebody's life a lot better, and you're going to create a fun day for them. Yeah. So one of the things I encourage people to do, particularly young people, if you're super active, find a way to be super active and maybe help somebody else at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't discussed?
I think it's wonderful what you're doing, just reaching out to other people who have this shared experience with the one that you've had for the past, you said 22 years, right?
Yep.
And to get increase awareness, and to also let people know that they don't have to feel sorry for us, right? We've gotten stronger, smarter, more compassionate, and I feel super fortunate that I've been given this opportunity to be Charlotte's dad. And I think it's important that people know that.
Yeah, that's great. Ready for the last question?
Sure thing.
Do you like Spam, yes or no?
Always loved it. I have to say, guilty pleasure.
There you go.
My dad used to make these amazing Spam sandwiches when I was a kid.
Like fried or not fried?
Yes, right, fried.
Yeah. So I live in Austin, Minnesota, where they make Spam. Hormel's located, and there's a Spam museum. So if you ever come to Minnesota and want to visit the Spam museum, you have to come to Austin.
Good to know.
See, I've been asking all of my guests that question, and it's funny because like you were a pretty quick, strong yes. Usually the no's are just as fast. It's usually strong either way.
Yeah, we grew up in just this traditional cooking household. My dad loved savory things, and let's face it, as a kid, that was pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. Where's the best place for everybody to connect with you?
Thank you for asking. So I'm easily findable on LinkedIn, Curtis Butler, on Instagram, Curtis A. Butler. I've started posting there, just quick tips for students and recent grads. And also my website for my coaching services is easy to find at jobreadygrads.com or simply guidedascentcoaching.com. But Job Ready Grads is easy to remember.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Really a pleasure. Nice to meet you too.
Thanks. To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inclusive Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, or review the show. Your feedback helps us connect with more champions of inclusion. Remember to share this podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Together we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.